This screencast looks at Section A of the Research in Criminology Assessment Task 2. This is the first section of an assessment which contains 4 sections in total, sections A, B, C and D. This is the wording as is stated in the assessment paper. So Part A looks at the research question, literature and ethical statement, and it's worth 20% of Assessment Task 2. Section A asks you to briefly outline the results from your literature review and explain the rationale for your central research question. All students should have looked at a literature review as part of their assessment task 1, and we would advise students to look at that work, go back and look at the literature that was found in the workshops, and think about how this can be embedded into Section A of assessment task 2. Your literature review is to provide a rationale for your central research question. And this was a question that was devised in research groups during semester 1. In addition to that, students are asked to provide an ethical statement which covers the collection and use of both the qualitative and quantitative data used. Ethics was covered in semester 1. It was also covered as part of assessment task 1, and students should reflect on their learning from that part of this module. Taking each part in turn then, students need to be really clear in assessment task 2, section A, what their central research question is. A statement as to what your central research question is should be provided, and remember, it's a question, it ends in a question mark. This is the question that is an overriding all of the research that was done throughout this module. So it encapsulated everything that was done in the qualitative interviews and everything that was done in the secondary data analysis of the British Crime Survey. So your central research question was the broad question that had oversight of all the work that's been done on this module. And it was created as part of your research teams in semester 1. As research teams, you decided which concepts were of interest, and concepts are generally fairly broad. They consider a number of different variables. If you're looking at your quantitative data, they covered a number of different questions if you're looking at your qualitative data. For example, some of you looked at the concept of fear, some of you looked at the concept of personal characteristics like gender or age or location. Some of you looked at victimisation, some of you looked at personal safety. These are broad concepts that you were interested in and you included in your central research question. You were also asked to provide a rationale for creating this question. Now, in order to do this, it was important that you looked at literature to see whether there was a grounding and work that had already been done in this area, and that would provide a rationale for your research question. And that's also what you need to include in section A of this assessment task. So how is the central research question supported by the literature review? Now, as has previously been mentioned, the literature review was commented on in the first assessment task, and this now needs to be written up again using different words so you're not falling into the trap of self-plagiarism, but provided in section A to support the research question that's been investigated and reported on in this assessment. So looking at the literature review in a bit more detail, you should have a number of references and sources that provided context for the central research question. And this needs to be written up and provided in section A. And what is stated in the assessment guidance, and this text has been taken directly from that, is that it might have been necessary to go back and look at further literature, as in the initial literature that you found may not now cover everything that you want to say, and you may have found other things that you want to revisit. So as you've been going through your process of analysis, it may now have become clear that you need to go back and look for further literature to support what you found or add further context to any kind of conclusions. In section A, we're thinking about a brief summary of the literature. In terms of the specific rationale and the explanation of the qualitative and the quantitative data, that will appear in sections B and section C. In section A, it's linking literature to the research question and providing context for that and some kind of summary in relation to the conclusions. And in relation to those conclusions, have you found literature that says something, that explains your central research question? Have you looked at literature which shows a relationship between your two concepts? So how is this literature supporting your central research question, supporting your analysis as you've gone through sections B and C, and supporting and being linked into section D. And it's an overview of that literature that you're providing for us in section A. The other part of section A is to revisit the concept of ethics. Ethics are really important when we're considering any kind of data collection or data analysis, and it's really important that you've got a good grounding of ethics before you move on to any type of dissertation at level 6. So the ethical statement in section A relates to how the qualitative and quantitative data was collected and used. And please make that distinction between the two words there, collected and used. And make sure you are referencing a specific code of ethics. In our workshops, we looked at the British Society of Criminology Code of Ethics, and we would expect you to make reference to this or any other suitable code of ethics that we use within the social sciences. It'll be important to look back at workshop 6 and the accompanying lecture that we did, which considered the ethical principles of criminological research. That will be a good starting point. The other thing to do is any good criminological methods text will have a section on ethics, will help you relate ethics to your work and what you have conducted through your central research question and in section B and section C of your data analysis. So, ethical statement, go back and have a look at your lecture slides, look at a code of ethics and any good methods text which will give you the referencing to support what you're saying and making links between the ethics and your research. Finally, just to support that point again, section A should be supported by methodological reading, so make sure it's referenced appropriately. So you've got reading from your methods textbooks and literature which support the concepts related to your central research question. So referencing is key, and that's not just in section A, that is supported and emphasised throughout this assessment task.